News Falls Count Anywhere, part of the Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Ernest EJ Chris. We're coming to you, recording this actually on Wednesday night, May 7th, 2025. We are just 3 days away from WWE Backlash. And of course, joined here by my fellow co-host here, who's very, very, very excited right now because we just watched the end of the Celtics and Knicks game. The Knicks are now going up 2-0 in their series. So Rob the Genius, very happy, all smiles. Take it back to the Garden, up 2-0. My God. How you feeling?
Oh man, look, wasn't expecting to win one game. And look, game one we get blown out. And then they came back and pulled that one out. And this one, I mean, look, I was happy with just getting one game up there. So we got two.
Yeah. And the thing is, unlike Cleveland, Indiana, where Cleveland could say, well, we have injuries and whatnot, even though game two, the way they lost that game was pretty terrible. You should have lost that game anyway. I mean, at least toward the end. Boston's full strength now. They're full strength. I mean, they're losing games because they're not disciplined. They're shooting 23 pointers. They missed 90 something 3-pointers in the last two games.
Yeah,
like you can't win basketball that way, and that's all they're doing, and they can't adjust. I said this. I know this is a wrestling podcast. We'll get to the wrestling stuff in a second, but I said this before the year started. New York has, first off, I had New York on the finals before the year started. I said New York had the personnel to win to beat Boston in the 7-game series. But watching all year long, I didn't know if they were disciplined enough to get the job done. But they had the personnel to do it because they have guys who are very long on the wings that can limit the shooting. But I mean, they've done a good job with that so far in the series. So great job by you guys. But series not over yet. We go to the Garden over the weekend, and we'll see how that plays out for your New York Knickerbockers. We got a lot to talk about today on the podcast. Obviously, got Backlash coming up on Saturday. I'm looking forward to that show. Really good matches there on that one. We continue our series on three people who should be in the Hall of Fame. Part number 6. That's done by TikTok wrestling content creator OVW Dropout. React to that as well. A couple of other things I want to touch on real quick. First and foremost, I want to start on the recent post-WrestleMania cuts that happened last week. I don't have the whole list in front of me, though, but some of the notable names that were cut last week: Braun Strowman, Shayna Baszler, Dakota Kai. Am I not mistaken? Was on there as well.
Yeah.
A lot of NXT wrestlers too. You probably more familiar than I am because I'm not really an NXT watcher in the same way I used to be. Are there any shocking names for you that were cut that stood out to you?
Okay, so Braun Strowman's the biggest name, but if you've watched him at all this year, the guy can barely move. He's not mobile. He's barely mobile at all. And he recently, there was a video of him talking. He has run through all the various injuries he's had, and he said he's 15% paralyzed in one leg, and just all types of back and knee and shoulder, and he's 6'9" and he's almost 400 pounds. And then he's out there taking bumps and running around and everything. So yeah, it's no surprise that his whole body is just wrecked. And it's very possible they feel that at this point, having him can just, he'll have to be in very limited duty going forward. And they probably just figured that it's at some point you have to call it, and just you got.
He was still active on TV recently.
Yeah. But at some point you gotta, at some point if you're in charge, you just gotta call it at some point. So this guy's gonna end up in a wheelchair if we just keep sending them out there.
His career could be in jeopardy, I think. Here.
I
think he's 40. I think he's 40 years old or over 40.
So it sounds like he still wants to wrestle. So I could see him just doing popping up and making appearances. Doing indie stuff, or maybe do a day or TNA or something, or
you think AEW any use for him? Because Tony Khan loves bringing those names in. Those really known names.
He's very much not their type, though. I mean, they don't. Yeah, they. I mean, yeah. So I don't see it. Maybe. I mean, well, maybe they have like this every year. They have like a casino battle royal, and then they usually have like people who pop up for maybe somebody who's new to the company will be in it as a surprise, or somebody might just pop up for like a one off. So I mean, maybe that. I don't see Tony signing him to be a full-time wrestler because he just, I mean, he's just not in shape to do that, really. So I think from here on out, he'll be popping up and doing one-offs. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is if then maybe they'll call him back next year. Yeah, I mean, I can see them calling him back next year, and maybe
I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, it's a big roster, and they're definitely, yeah, I could, but those injuries, man, I'm telling you, and obviously NXT, with NXT, what they're doing, and they bring guys up. They've been very aggressive, bring guys up from NXT, especially recently. So, yeah, could I see him come back to the company at some point within the next year or two? Yeah. If I put a percentage on it, I put on like probably 40% though, because I think I don't know. I just think that he was cut once already. He came back.
yeah. Well, it's just, the thing is though, but there's still nobody. There's nobody like him. So
that is true, and there's still,
so
and there's room for that in today's wrestling. I mean, even with all the um high flyers we have in pro wrestling, and even though with Triple H embracing broader sports entertainment, at the same time there is still Braun Strowman still has a lane that is, to be honest with you, pretty necessary and still there. But I also think there's not were people actually high on Braun Strowman though recently? Because I've seen a lot of people complain about Braun Strowman. Like, he had his time, he had an opportunity to be the guy or one of the guys in like 2018. There was a time where he could have been a top guy possibly, and then that ship sailed pretty quickly.
well, because I mean, the IWC has been done with him for a while, but
Right.
he's always been over with the general audience
Yeah.
because
He has that music too. Also, that's really popular.
guys like him are always over with the general audience in pro wrestling. I mean, big giant sized guys who run people over and throw people around. There's always a play. Yeah, I mean, the general audience always loves those guys. I think the IWC kind of gave up on him when Vince just wouldn't pull the trigger on him being like back in 2018. The IWC very much wanted him to win the Universal title in 2017 and 2018, and Vince didn't pull the trigger. And so they kind of gave up on him. The IWC kind of gave up on him. But
Yeah.
the general audience has always loved the guy. So, um, just I think at this point he can't do a full-time schedule.
Right.
He toughed it out through WrestleMania this year, but I think going forward he's going to be a guy that does, you know, a one-off here or there, and I think they will call him. I could see them calling him back next year, and then him doing like spot duty, here and there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other big name here that got cut also on the women's side, Shayna Baszler, cut by the company.
Yeah.
Again, I've been saying for the last 5 years, from the day she walked into the company, since that WrestleMania in the with the one fan, WrestleMania 36, that she has been misused from day one. And it's surprising actually she's lasted as long as she did, honestly.
They just didn't want to pull the trigger. Like they had a couple of opportunities where they could have pulled the trigger and given her a bigger push. Like, do I think she would have been like a long term like main event level? No, but do I think she could have won the women's title a couple of times if they pushed her a little stronger? Yes. But every time they got an opportunity, they backed off. And then because remember, she ran through the elimination chamber, to get the match with Becky at WrestleMania, and then that there was an opportunity there to have her win the title and go forward, but they didn't do it. And then later, a few years later, she beat Ronda. I mean, that was Ronda's call. Ronda had been wanting to do that during her whole second run there, but she wanted to feud with Shayna and put her over.
That should have been the that was probably her best opportunity to rehab her her WWE run, and then
and then they
like foreign
just
church.
well, because she won the match, she won by like technical knockout or something, and then like I think either the very next night or the next, I mean, the next Monday or the Monday after, they had to lose. I mean, and so they just, they would just never commit. Like they had a couple of chances, and they wouldn't do it. And then after that, I mean, once they didn't go with it after she beat Ronda, that was kind of it, really.
Yeah,
Um, 'Cause I think because then it was, I think I think people gave up on her because then it was kind of, it just looked like, okay, well, they're just not going to do it. Um,
right.
and but then they re-signed her last year, which I mean,
And it shocked me because again, misuse and
because I just look, I mean, whatever reasons you had to release her this year, or whatever issue, whatever reasons you had to release her in 2025 were there in 2024. Like,
yeah,
it's not like, I mean, she didn't blow her knee out or something, or she didn't get sick or something, or whatever. I mean, she didn't get in trouble or anything. Um, every reason to not keep her today was there when they re-signed her. So I was a bit surprised, really.
yeah, yeah.
So I guess so it's them releasing her now surprised me because like again, you just resigned her last year. Like, why release her now? I mean, you should just not resign her last year. I mean, uh,
Now, I will say this much though. We talk about Braun Strowman and him whether he'll come back. I definitely do see Shayna come back at some point, and I'll tell you why. It's going to tie into the next segment real quick, and we'll get to it now if we want to.
yeah,
Ronda Rousey. There's been rumors that WWE will like her back at some point. No word if she wants to come back or not, but there's a lot of interest there. Obviously, we thought when we saw Ronda, probably I would assume you feel the same way too. Also, when Ronda, put over Shayna, we thought this might have been the end for Ronda in WWE. She has a family now, all this stuff. But if these rumors are true, and she's back, I do see a scenario where Shayna Baszler will be with her. I mean,
yeah,
maybe, and that's the way to use them. Both those girls.
and because well, I know Rhonda was not happy with the way her second run went. Um, but she was not. Her issues were more with Vince and Bruce Pritchard than with Hunter and Stephanie. Like,
Correct. Remember that
and
tweet? Remember that tweet she had? She's like, there was that tweet she said, like, well, even though Vince is gone, he's still here because Bruce is still the avatar, I guess, to Vince. So
yeah,
the connection.
and now because when she came back, when she came back, like the thing she wanted to do more than anything, she wanted to team up with Shayna for a little while and then feud with her and then put her over. And again, this is by her own words. They gave her the runaround for a
Yeah.
long time, and because they wanted her to be like they wanted her to be win the singles title and hold it for a while and then do some stuff with that first. And so she did that. She won the singles title, and then you know she won it back after Liv casting the briefcase on her. So at that point, they were still kind of giving her the runaround as far as letting her do the stuff with Shayna.
Yeah.
And so she walked. So that was her call when Charlotte came back and beat her that night on SmackDown.
Hmm.
That was actually her call.
Right.
Because I don't mean for anyone who isn't listening and doesn't know the story, because she talked about it in her book. Basically, she was fed up and she walked in that day and said, "Okay, I'm dropping the title and I'm losing it tonight. I'm losing it to Charlotte, and that's it. And don't fuck with me." Basically,
Did you read the book?
I read some excerpts of it, but
Okay. Okay.
yeah. So this is right from the book. This is not this is not dirt sheet whatever. Like,
This is from the source itself.
yeah, this is from her herself. She came in that night. She went to Paul Heyman and she said, "Look, I'm done with it. I'm done with these assholes. Tell them I'm dropping the title. I'm going to drop it to Charlotte, and that's the end of it. And don't try to screw around with me." And so that was her call. And and then so she finally did get to do the feud with Shayna and all that, and then and then of course she put Shayna over on her way out, but she just wasn't happy with that second go round. Um,
Would you say the first go around was good? So a little behind the curtain, maybe so people already know that I took a 17 hiatus. So even though I knew Ronda Rousey was involved in wrestling in 2015 through 2019, 20 whatever, I wasn't watching the product. So I remember the buzz that after she lost her fight, to Holly Holm in UFC, and then lost again when she came back from her hiatus. She went to WWE full time, and I remember people talking about the Ronda Rousey and stuff, but I never actually knew if it was well embraced that her first run was good. Some people I talked to say it was really, really good. Some people say it was like, hey man, you know what I mean? That's what you talk to. Obviously, the second run, I didn't like the second run personally. I thought she was misused, obviously.
Okay, so no, the first run went really well up for maybe like about 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and then because look, they had a formula that worked, and basically it was just she would come out there and you would put her up against one of the heels, and you'd have her beat up on the heels, and you would beat up on the security guards,
Yeah.
right? And that worked. The crowd ate it up. They sold a lot of merchandise and all that good stuff, and it was going really well. And then as she went up, as she had to fight some bigger name people, that's where things started to kind of fall apart because, well, things started to go kind of south because they had a feud with Nikki Bella, which in hindsight was not a good idea
Right.
because the Bellas are at that point where they're not going to get booed. And so even though they were, they had turned on Ronda, they were heels, but they just weren't going to get booed like that. And so, and people kind of started to turn on her there. And then they matched it. Then they had her start getting into it with Becky, and that's when Becky was like really blowing up.
Yeah.
And so she got booed. And then when Becky had to miss Survivor Series and Charlotte filled in for her, they had Charlotte, attack her with a kendo stick and Larry out with a chair. And the crowd went wild, and they were, they were chanting like "Thank you,
Yeah,
Charlotte."
all of that, especially. I'm glad you told me this stuff because all of that I had no clue about because I wasn't watching. I came in after WrestleMania 35. I came in
Okay.
about 2 months after WrestleMania 35.
So things started to go south, and then so they did turn her heel towards the end.
Yeah.
But the people who put it this way, the people who she was bringing in did not want to see her be a heel.
So
The
there
people,
was a bit of a friction between
yeah,
the
well,
two sources of
because they turned her heel because at that point, the people in the building were booing her, right? But the people, but well, there were a lot of people booing her, but then the problem is, well, first of all, she can't talk, and some of that she has a speech impediment, so
Yeah, apparently.
I mean, because she's talked about that, like, she wasn't able to talk until she was like 5 or 6 years old, and, um, so she has trouble speaking in front of a crowd. Like, she can sit down on a talk show and then talk fine, or she could talk to one of us, one-on-one, fine, but, talking on a microphone in front of a crowd she just really can't do it very well, and if you're a heel, you gotta do that, right? So,
Mhm.
but also people didn't wanna. Most people just didn't want to see her be a heel and beat up on people and whatnot. They wanted to see her beat up the bad guys. So it just didn't really, things just kind of went south there. So things they didn't end great the first time. I mean, it was great for like again for about 6 months. It was really great. Her debut at WrestleMania was really good, and but so it didn't end well. And now when she came back, now the IWC didn't want her to come back, but
Mhm.
you can go back and go watch that Royal Rumble where she came back and you listen to the crowd.
I mean, in
Um,
2022, I think it was, right? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you can listen to the crowd when she came back. They were into it. The people in the building were into it.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing also. And I think you've even touched on this on your shows in the past. Especially with the wrestling data segments you've done on your podcast. That people sitting there say, "Oh, we don't want Ronda and I'm sick of Ronda," but the numbers tell us differently. You
Yeah,
say one thing, but then you look at the viewing numbers on WWE YouTube page. The segments that she's involved in with her name on there are rated higher than the other ones. A few more.
yeah, and then when those first few months when she came back, you know, when she was feuding with Charlotte, when some of the highest rated segments on SmackDown. I mean,
Yeah.
so like people wanted to see her. I mean, there was an audience for her, and to be perfectly honest, I mean, Look, since I say, since summer of 2022, because that's when
Mhm.
things kind of started to go south again. Um, Look, the only woman wrestler who has done anything approaching the numbers that she would do is Rhea Ripley. As far as when you look at like TV ratings and social media, YouTube views and things like that. Um, so I mean, Ronda is still arguably the biggest woman star they've ever had.
Without question. I don't think it's even
Um,
debatable at this point. Looking at the
yeah,
data, looking at the
I mean,
data.
unless you're going to count somebody like Trish Stratus, and even, but and Trish did to get beyond the wrestling bubble, but
No,
event,
no.
a little bit, but of course, Ronda was already a big star outside of professional
Yeah,
wrestling.
Ronda brought that into the bubble,
Yeah,
whereas the other way around.
and the other part of it is that, I mean, and this is something that people don't give her credit for. Bringing her in was one of the main driving forces behind the whole women's revolution,
Absolutely.
I mean, it was all, you know, it was centered ultimately around getting Ronda Rousey to wrestle for them and to do a big match at WrestleMania, which was, of course, the main event of WrestleMania.
Of course.
That was the end game to the women's revolution. I mean, ultimately, I mean, that was the well, yeah, it was the end game, because honestly, ever since then, they really haven't had any long-term plans, really, since then. Like, everything has just been kind of, make it up as they go, almost. I mean, that's been the last 6 years. I mean, like, when they stumble across something good, they'll play it out, but, um, the last time things were really planned out with any type of long-term vision was that lead up to WrestleMania 35. And that's because of her.
Yeah.
So, if you are a fan or a big supporter of women's wrestling, then
You'd be thankful of Ronda Rousey.
yes, because they would not have. I mean, look, and everybody love, they would not have done that they would not have made that big of a push with just the horsewomen. Okay, they wouldn't have. All right, they would not have. They just, sorry, folks. And up until the very end, like, Ronda got, when she was on the show, the women got more time, and they got more matches on cards. Uh, than I mean, she got Shayna. Shayna has never had a singles match on a Big Four pay-per-view other than that WrestleMania match with Becky. She didn't have one ever since, and the one she did get after that was with Ronda.
Mhm.
Okay, Ronda, when her and Shayna were tag team champions for that brief time, they got, they basically they got them to wake up the tag team division for a few months. So, you know, Ronda was a net positive for the women's division while she was there. Um, Now, as far as her coming back a third time, now look, I think at this point it wouldn't have the juice or the buzz this time, because
In
because
comparison to the first one,
oh
the
yeah,
second one,
because
to the second, the first comeback. I mean, in other words,
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have it. Yeah, I mean, at this point,
she's not as relevant. Like every year we go away from it, she's not as relevant as she used to be. Like we had the
yeah, and this is the
juice.
thing, and she's been like off the grid, like, I'm pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Ronda Rousey hasn't been a name, and we've heard in any form of media in the last 2 years.
So, I mean, now if she was out there doing, look, if she was, I don't know, out competing in some athletic events or doing a bunch of movies or whatever, then that'd be different. But yeah, she's been mostly off the grid for the past couple of years. So
Well, almost it's not to say that if she does come back, she wouldn't get juice. She will get juice, and I think she'll get some interest. And I think the numbers, as you covered through the years, I think those view numbers will be high because she is still a name. Obviously not as big a name as she was in 2015. Certainly not now, not in 2020, 2022. And in this day age with media and everything else, it's here today, gone today. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where, like, okay,
yeah,
do we still? But I think because of what she's done, um, and there's still enough smart wrestling fans. I do think if she comes back, if it's done the right way and correctly and effective, that she will have an impact on. Not obviously, I will still put 2022's return bigger, but I will still say that this could be pretty special if they allow
um,
it to be.
yeah, and I think this time you could bring her back as a heel. Because I think people aren't as, yeah, I think because the audience is a little bit different now. And now that we've been through, that we've seen her go through it twice now. And again, I think again, how you bring her back matters. And I think you do. I mean, you could bring her back as a heel this time, just have her just come in and start killing a bunch of people. Um, and I think that's another thing that made it, just her the second time because and look, I mean, it really helped Liv Morgan going, working with her, but it also made Ronda look a little bit diminished because she was struggling to beat Liv Morgan, right? And Ronda's supposed to be like Brock Lesnar, basically. Um, so I think to that end, that didn't help her. But again, I think I mean, there's still a place for her. I know people will complain, but there'll be people complaining, yes, but there's still a place for her. And again, it'll get more time for the women. It'll get women more matches, and so
Yeah,
look, I think it will still be a plus. I mean, and
absolutely. I think still a plus. I agree with 100%.
yeah,
I
it's just
absolutely agree.
now the different now. Now the first time one reason the first time went so much better was they managed her, like they protected her and like managed her when she was on screen a lot tighter. They didn't put her in a bunch of situations where she had to talk. Um, and they only put her in matches with people who could really, make her look good and all of that the first time. The second time they weren't as stringent about who they put her in the ring with. And so there were definitely some matches that were kind of not
And
so.
right. And I do think also too the big one here, if you do believe that he was definitely a problem for her, we are now even more moves with Vince McMahon now than we ever have been at any point. When she came back in 2022, Vince was still there, and
Yeah.
even when he had the first wave of allegations and he was out for a little bit, he was still kind of around. That certainly at the very least an influence, as she mentioned in that tweet about a year or so ago, 2 years ago. Now you can't say that. Since then, Vince has been gone. In fact, they're now a bigger corporation now, TKO and whatnot. So things would change a lot in just 2 or 3 years. I think the environment now for Ronda is actually much more palatable for her anyway, mentally going forward. Now, obviously, how she gets received is how she gets received, but I think for her, she'll have a better landing spot now, and this is also why I think she'll also have enough influence to bring in Shayna Baszler back as well too. So I don't think we've seen lots of Shayna Baszler in WWE, honestly. So that's just my opinion. Have you been following this? Did you see this thing that happened yesterday? Shelton Benjamin against and Hulk Hogan. Well, Shelton Benjamin calling Hulk Hogan.
Oh well, because from what I understand, Hogan he was on Pat McAfee, and I think he do what he does is he may I guess he was actually talking nicely about Shelton, but I think he kind of insinuated that they might have been buddies or something.
Yeah,
And
here's the tweet real quick, and I'll let you fill me in on this. So Shelton Benjamin tweeted yesterday. I'm showing on the screen here. Message to Hulk Hogan, and he tagged him and put a record, dude. You lost me forever with your quote, "Don't get caught," unquote, or as you would call it, quote, apologies speech. So rather than screw up my name and pretend we ever had any sort of camaraderie, which we never had, please do me a favor. And then he puts the Will Smith meme from the Oscars where he slapped
oh
Chris
yeah,
Rock. Keep my name out of your fucking mouth. Okay, so there's no history between these two, right? At all? Or is this all just based on what you just said, his appearance on McAfee and him saying things that may or may not have happened?
I think so. And then the fact he got his name wrong too. So
Dude, you know what's funny? I'm thinking about this too also. And it's even more pronounced now in 2025 that everyone, and I mean everyone, feels very comfortable just shitting on Hulk Hogan. Even active wrestlers today. Forget the fact that it's Iron Sheik and Ultimate Warrior and all these guys that work with them and obviously are retired and all this stuff and whatever and but shoot interviews. But you're hearing current guys. Seth Rollins had comments about him. I thought Seth's comments actually a little more classier than most. But I think the it's funny. I'm watching because I just watched the WWE Vault you see on YouTube.
Yeah.
It was great last year. They've been putting up more videos and stuff on their social on the YouTube page, and they just dropped I think a few days ago the story, which I love. By the way, I love this as someone who had years I missed, having storylines being told and being organized into actual videos now. Fantastic idea. So they had the storyline of Hulk Hogan's return to WWE in 2002 after we came up with the NWO, and then obviously they had the big match against The Rock, and of course the return of Hulkamania. It was dubbed Return of Hulkamania. Everything after WrestleMania 18, and I'm watching the video, and I'm like, dude, this dude's curating at the time was as high, and some could argue when you look at the audience that WWE was at that point too, also higher than it was at Pico Mania in 2002. And then you watch him now, and then you watch everything now 20 plus years later. It is insane how this guy's curating is just falling off a fucking cliff. And it's not to say that there are other wrestlers out there who's done problematic things. Stone Cold Steve Austin, domestic abuser, still the most popular guy in the company. You have guys that done many bad things there, but Hogan's fall for how big he is and how much he means to the business is actually quite shocking. Just how bad it is now in 2025.
Okay, so because I remember back in 2002, when the whole thing at Skydome, when the crowd went with him against The
I
Rock.
watched it live. I watched it live. I know.
Yeah, and I mean, he got hot enough off of that that they put the belt on him.
Yeah, they put belt on like a month later. They showed in the video. He beat Triple H, and then he held him up for about a month or so, and then lost the Undertaker. But the Q rating of Hogan at the time was as high as peak Hulkamania, in my opinion.
And well, I think because so much has happened. Because one, I mean, even before the racist stuff came out, more and more people, more information got out about his backstage stuff, and then I think for a lot of people, like when the thing that happened with him and Sting at Starrcade '97 was like that was a big problem,
right?
And even though and because that pretty much, I mean, that basically screwed up the biggest angle in wrestling at the point, and what was supposed to be the big climax, right? But then as more and more came out about his backstage stuff, and then he kept telling all these lies about like everything, and
the internet shoot interviews didn't help. The internet, Iron Sheik, making it a thing to fuck the Hulk Hogan, like all that.
And then
it has not been kind of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and then and then the whole thing with Sean overselling, and nobody like basically the fans sided with Sean over on that thing, right? And you get like and even some of the documentaries because they had a documentary on the WWE Network with they did like rivalries and whatnot, and they did like him and Roddy Piper. And Piper was like really candid, basically, because their matches in WWF were always like really chaotic, and during that documentary, Piper basically was like, "Look, I didn't cooperate, and I didn't cooperate on purpose." And
he wanted to be buried by Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, because he just said, "Look, I'm," because his mentality was like, "Look, dude, you're not gonna bury me. You're not gonna kick out of my finisher and drop the leg on me. You're not doing that to me." So, I mean, their matches were very chaotic, and because Piper just he refused to play ball. And so, um, just more and more information about stuff like that kept coming out and kept coming out.
And then the cherry on top is, of course, racism on top of that.
Yeah, and then that, and then also I think the fact that, and then they brought him back, right? And I think that put a really bad taste in a bunch of people's mouth because, well, they brought him back, and then on top of that, I think like it's one of his first appearances when he came back was to plug with one of those Saudi shows, and it just everything just kind of snowballed and snowballed,
Of
and,
course.
and then he shows up at the Republican convention last year.
Well, you know, there's too. Also, he's leaning to that MAGA stuff too, especially because of the fact that at least there is a segment somewhere that will accept him, and so he's gonna take what
Yeah,
he can at this point now because he knows that overall people can't stand the guy. Here's what's lazy, and I mentioned in the past also too, and I know you agree with me on this because I remember obviously the big one that stood out this year is it was the first episode of Raw on Netflix and back in January, and he
yeah.
showed up there and he got fucking booed to hell on that episode, and people assume immediately, oh well, it's solely because of politics and solely because of he's a Trump supporter and this and that.
Well,
I'm
so
like,
I
that's
never
lazy as
thought that.
shit because the Undertaker had Trump on his podcast,
Yeah,
openly
I
voted for
never
Donald
thought
Trump,
that.
so Triple H, and those guys that same night got cheered heavily. It is not just politics, buddy.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, because it's pro wrestling. Most of the locker room is at least they might not be MAGA, but
They're
most of
leaning
the
right.
locker
They're
room
right.
are
Right leaning guys.
because if nothing, I mean,
The business model. That's why.
well, because that, and then they're in the high income tax bracket. They want their tax cuts,
Hmm.
and a lot of them are just from areas. They grew up in places that voted Republican,
Yeah.
and it look as sophisticated as we like to think we all are about how we choose to vote.
It's
Most
very
people,
simple. It's really simple about what you deem what you prioritize or a bias, and that's just what it is. And people,
well, I mean, most people vote the way they grew up voting.
most do, yeah.
It's not. I mean, yeah, like I know this isn't a political show, but look, in regards to the politics of pro wrestlers, most people vote the way they grew up voting,
Right. It's
and
based on the parents
so,
voted
and
or
that's just what it is. We all like. I know a lot of us like to think we're all sophisticated and we're all, oh, I'm in the policy. No, 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 no. And most people vote the way that they grew up voting. Okay, um, and if you look at where a lot of these wrestlers grew up, they grew up in Ohio and Florida, and and in certain areas of those, in other southern states. And of course, pro wrestling is still mostly white in terms of the people who do it. And so, I mean, and white people vote 60% Republican. And so I mean, when you combine all of those things, yes, pro wrestlers mostly,
lean right.
yeah. And and so, but in so that case, I mean, so no, Hogan did not get booed because of politics. He got booed because of all the stuff that's piled up about him.
Yeah.
And and as before we talked about some of the kind of the things, the kind of missteps or weird decisions that have been made lately this year,
Hmm.
as far as the company doing and stuff. Um, Putting him out there in such a prominent position is definitely one of them.
I think they need to see it. I think they need to see for themselves. Just how if it's. I mean, because the thing was, what I knew. This is what I knew he was in the shit. WrestleMania 37 in Tampa, Florida. Okay, in his hometown. Okay, he hadn't been around the company in probably a couple of years at that point. You know, we're years removed from all the things that happened in 2015. But he gets booed at WrestleMania in his hometown. If that's not a sign, I don't know what is.
Yeah. No, look. Okay. Look. At the end, look. It's business. Obviously, look. If you want to set him up a booth and a table at WrestleMania weekend to take pictures and all of that, there's still people who will gladly take a picture with him and get an autograph and all that. So I'm not naive enough to think that they would not make some money off of him if they could,
Of
right?
course, and I'm sure they
So
have. I'm sure they still have.
yeah, so look, I mean, so to that end, again, like I said, look, if they set him up with a booth and a table at WrestleMania weekend or at those Fanatics Fest things or something, then okay, fine, right? I mean, whatever, right? But yeah, I mean, to put him out there, and because he was on Pat McAfee this week, right? Just to put him out there like that, and then you know, Yeah, it's kind of a head scratcher, really. I
It
mean,
is. It is.
but then again, look, pro wrestling is, you know, it's not just a bubble for the fans, it's a bubble for the business, the people in the business, it's a bubble. And, and there are people who don't, I mean, they don't they don't see the whole picture.
Right. All right, let's get to it tonight. Again, this weekend, this Saturday coming up is the WWE Backlash, which will take
Yes.
place in St. Louis, Missouri, at the Enterprise Center, airing, of course, on Peacock. We have as of right now, we have 5 matches announced for this damn thing.
And
It's the first one, huh?
they didn't announce anything Monday, so
No,
unless they do something at the last minute, this Friday, then this is it.
but I'm okay with 5. 5 is fine. 5 is fine. It's fine. You can get 2.5 hours of quality. You can get 2.5 hours of quality content out of this a 5 match card. You could. Tony Khan, take notes. Just saying. First match I'll preview here. We got Dominic Mysterio versus my boy Penta for the Intercontinental Championship. There's no way Dominic's losing the title this soon. I
I
mean,
don't think so.
unless we're in the era of WWE Attitude Era booking. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think he's going to, nah, because it's only been 3 weeks since WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So, I don't think you put the belt on him, because the reason you put the belt on him in the first place is to get heat. So, I mean, you don't do that just to have him lose it,
Well, he's getting cheered though, dude. He's getting cheered.
Yeah. So you don't, I mean, but you don't put the belt on him just to have him lose it 3 weeks later.
Yeah. I think Dominic wins. I could see the Penta wins though, but by DQ, by Finn Balor getting involved and they call it DQ. I don't see Penta winning the IC championship. By the way, Penta has the best entrance right now in all pro wrestling right now. that dude's hysterical. So much swag. So I'm gonna go ahead and look. There will not be a title change. I'm gonna
Yeah,
take Penta by DQ, but I think it won't be a title change.
I think Dominic is going to retain the title one way or the
Right,
other.
right. No one way or the other. Okay. Next one here we have the Fatal 4-Way match for the WWE US title. I'm looking forward to this match. Jacob Fatu, the champion, versus LA Knight versus Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre. This is easily my most match I'm looking forward to watching the most. Look, I think Fatu is red hot right now. I think he could be the next guy in the next year. I can't see him losing the title though this early.
No,
I don't see what it makes sense.
Well, there's another case. I mean, he just won it at WrestleMania. So
Right. But
and,
again, unless we're going to the era of Attitude Era booking, I mean, we'll see.
I don't think he no, you don't have him again. You don't have him lose it. And the only way he would lose it 3 weeks later is if he was going to win the Universal title at the
Right.
next show or something. I mean, so no, I mean you would not have him. No, he just won the WrestleMania. He's not going to lose it this early.
But this would be a banger though. This
Like,
will definitely be a banger.
look, I think this is going to be the best match of the night. I think.
I agree with you 100% on that one. I'll take Jake Fatu as well. All right, we have Pat McAfee versus Gunther. Good build for 3 weeks though. I will say.
So I think Gunther's going to win. Pat will get some. He'll get some token offense in there. But I think ultimately, Gunther's going to,
I agree with you. However, does Gunther get hurt if McAfee wins this match? Unless there's a creative way to do it, where he doesn't get buried, he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, because I think, because right now, I mean, he lost to Jay, tapped out to Jay, and then remember he lost to Sammy last year. I mean, I don't think you don't do this match. I think the whole point of this was doing this was so Gunther can beat somebody and get some of his juice back up.
But being Pat McAfee though,
I mean, if he put it this way, if he annihilates him, Pat will get some offense in, but if the last 2 or 3 minutes are Gunther just beating the hell out of him and then putting him to sleep, then yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's got to be like, once he gets control in the final couple of minutes, like he's got to just completely annihilate him.
Yeah. All right. Next one. For the WWE's Women's Intercontinental Championship, we got Lyra Valkyria versus Becky Lynch. I've actually enjoyed this little build here. I know Lyra is still not catching on with people. Obviously, I like her work in the ring. I think it's more so the character and more so just her talking and whatnot on the mic. But I've actually enjoyed this little build here. But look, here's the thing: we need a title change on this night, and I think it'll come here on this one. So give it to Becky here to win the title, and I think they'll see if Lyra can get anything out of the chase. What do you think?
Man, I don't think buddy. I don't think that would be good for her to lose here.
For Lyra?
Because the whole point is, the whole thing is that people just don't think that highly of her. I mean, as an overall pro wrestling thing, not just.
She's a great worker.
Well, yeah, but okay, but yeah, but so is Zoe Stark, and people don't,
Right? No. I'm with 100%. There's something missing. There's a disconnect, obviously.
So if you have her come out here and like the first match she has against a big name person, and she just loses,
yeah,
that kind of sends a message. And yeah, and I mean when you consider the fact that again, she hasn't, again, like people aren't really digging her that much. They're like the general audience. If you ever go out there and just get beat the first, again, the first match she has against a big name person, she can go out and gets beat. And this, yeah, I mean, I don't think that would do a lot for her. So I think what's going to happen here, I think, because I think Bailey is going to come out there and help her win.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see. I just think we'll have probably one title change. I don't see the main event, but that's the next match right here. We're previewing here. The main event tonight, of course, will be for the undisputed WWE Championship: John Cena and Randy Orton. Again, Cena just got the belt literally 3 weeks ago at WrestleMania. He has 24 dates left before he officially hangs it up. We're now working on a backwards calendar between now and December. Obviously, we knew we get an Orton feud at some point. I didn't think we'd be this soon, but I'm not complaining. I mean, this would be a great spot for anyone to win a title in his hometown, but common sense tells you that this is way too soon to pull up of Cena at this point.
Yeah. Well, I think they went to this so soon because of Kevin Owens' injury.
Yeah.
So, because my guess would be is that had Owens not gotten hurt, that he and Randy would probably be having some type of stipulation match or something at this show. Um. So yeah, I think Cena wins, and I think we get some more interference here. I think R-Truth is going to help him win.
Wow. Any surprises you expect or you predicting here for this show?
Not really, because again, I mean, we're talking. It's such a short turnaround, and um, it's such a short turnaround. I don't think you make any waves here.
Yeah.
Um,
People say maybe Cody should come back this night. No, too soon. Way too soon.
No.
Cody should not. The earliest Cody should come back is money in the bank. The absolute earliest.
Yeah, well, he shouldn't come back until it's time for him to face Cena.
Right, and probably at SummerSlam.
Yeah, and so yeah, I can see maybe him coming out at the end of, like, if Cena defends against somebody at Money in the Bank, I can see Cody coming out at the end of it, to get in his face or whatever. But again, this is 3-week turnaround. You're not, I mean, not making a bunch of waves here.
Yeah.
And look, they got kind of stuck here because WrestleMania was so late. Yeah, if WrestleMania had been like the first weekend in April.
Yeah, the calendar's all jacked up.
Yeah, it is because we got, in 2 weeks we got Saturday night's main event. And then it was like a couple weeks after that, it's like I forgot what it is, but there's that Worlds Collide and all that stuff. So yeah, like right. So we got this Saturday. Then on the 24th, we got Saturday night's main event. Then the 25th is NXT Battleground, so that's the next day. And then the next weekend, we got the Worlds Collide.
A lot of wrestling coming up.
Yeah, and then
by the way, love this poster for the Backlash. Randy Orton with the snakes on it. Pretty badass.
So yeah,
if you're watching on the YouTube page, actually on the video, showing the page. So sorry, go ahead, buddy.
So we got this, and then 2 weeks we got Saturday night's main event, and then the night after that is Battleground for NXT. Then the week after that is, I think all right.
So Money in the Bank is the first week of June.
Yeah, it's June 7th.
Yeah, so we're gonna have 2 months between Money in the Bank and SummerSlam. Now there is a main event in between that, so that'll be the buffer between now and then.
Yeah, and then now I've heard there are rumors again. That
Evolution.
Yeah, but man, it's awfully weird they cut like a dozen women, right? And
to do Evolution now, when you cut out literally almost half the women's roster.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting how many women got released.
I saw at least like 8,
6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 9 women got released, and these were not women like most of them were actually doing stuff on TV, or at least within the past year have been involved in stuff on television. So it's not like these aren't 9 women who were at the end of the bench, right? So to do that, and then they pretty much wiped out the women's tag team division because several of the women who were released were involved in tag teams.
Yeah.
So, unless it's going to be a short, another 5-match pay-per-view.
And by the way, we will most likely, if things work out, especially if the show is a great show and it's a show worth talking about, but I think it will be. Rob and I will probably likely do a instant reaction podcast right after the show's over on here live and react with you guys, of course, about the show. So, all right, before we get out of here, we've been doing over the course of the last now 6 weeks, OVW Dropout on TikTok, a wrestling content creator, he's been doing a series, or he did a series rather, 8-part series actually. He found out it's 8 parts now. He concluded it a couple weeks ago, but it's 8 parts of 3 wrestlers that should not be in the WWE Hall of Fame, and he's had some different ones here and there. There's some we agree with. There's some we vehemently disagree with. Obviously, last week's episode, Warren Hogan, ridiculous. By the way, Rob, I purposely not watched these yet, so I can react in real time with you. So,
okay.
Okay, so here's part 6 of OVW Dropouts series on 3 guys or girls who should not be in the Hall of Fame.
Be in the WWE Hall of Fame, part 6. So I've had a lot of people ask me over the last 5 videos, how do you determine who's supposed to be in the Hall of Fame and who's not? A lot of people think I'm just throwing the names out for the likes and engagement. That's not 100% true. I actually have a grading scale that helps me determine these things. You want the full breakdown on this grading scale, I need 5,000 likes. 5,000 likes and I'll drop the video. But to put everything in a nutshell, I determine somebody's Hall of Fame status by 4 different categories. Championships, accolades, impact on the business, and last but certainly not least, in-ring ability and promo skill.
Wait. I gotta pause that. Okay, if that's the case, then why the fuck is Hogan out of the Hall of Fame? A Warrior, for that matter. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the video. Sorry.
It's pretty much a point system, graded out of 100. And if a candidate doesn't reach that 75% threshold that I have instituted, they don't make the Hall of Fame. So now that we've yapped for the last 60 seconds, let's get into it. Number 1 is none other than the Big Boss Man. So for the younger generation that's watching this video, y'all ain't gonna know who this is, but he was prominent in the Attitude Era. I like to preface my comments by saying, rest in peace. He was considered mid-card, but honestly, he wasn't that good to be mid. He's a former hardcore champion and tag team champion, but I think the number one thing that he's most known for is being hung by The Undertaker at WrestleMania. I mean, it made sense to Vince McMahon. I mean, they tried everything in the 90s. Big Boss Man, thank you to your contributions to the business, but you received a score of a 53%. Not Hall of Fame worthy in my book. All right, let's pick up the pace a little bit. Number 2 is none other than Sergeant Slaughter, another old head. I have to give him his flowers, former WWE champion, and he did main event WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan. But other than that, nothing. He received a slightly higher score than Big Boss Man at 61%. Unfortunately, he didn't meet that 75% threshold. Last but not least, and this may be controversial to a few, this actually hurts my heart to say this because I actually fucked with this guy when I was a kid. That's none other than Bill Goldberg. I mean, yeah, when you look at what he did in WCW, he did have a significant impact. He is a former world champion and a former universal champion. But what really hurt Bill in this was his in-ring ability and promo skills. He had the championships. He had the impact on the business. But in this model that I have created, he's nothing more than a high-tier celebrity attraction. Let me know what you guys think of this list. Also, make sure you like, share, and follow me for more wrestling content.
Oh, we're going to let you know right now. We're going to let you know right now.
3 people who should not.
This video is bullshit. All right. Let me okay. Move on real quick. All right, cool. All right, so the first one is Big Boss Man. Nah, fam. I get the criteria of championships, but you also have to understand the era. He's about like a prominent. Well, he was more prominent in the Edge era. No, I actually argue he was more prominent in the Hulkamania era. I mean, hello, he main evented he main evented the biggest storyline at the time in the entire company's history. The main event with the Mega Powers. He was in a feud with the top guy from the word go. And just because he didn't win titles back then in the 80s, heels weren't getting the titles, and that's the way they were booked. So he's saying heels can get into the Hall of Fame now as a result. So the championship argument, I think, is kind of sad. And then you have guys, who you mentioned that won championships and still can't get anyway. So what are you talking about?
Okay. All right. For what it's worth, he was the UWF champion back when that meant something.
Yep.
And also, now for this guy to say his in-ring ability wasn't, because he was an excellent, and he was one.
Oh my God, he was fantastic in the ring.
And by the way, okay, this is how good of an in-ring worker he was. In 1986, he was in the NWA. He was a Saturday morning. He started as a Saturday morning jobber, and he did that for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you know why he did it? You know why he was only a jobber for 2 weeks? Because the booker, Dusty Rhodes, saw how talented he was, and said, "No, we can't have this guy be a Saturday morning jobber." Okay. So they took him off of TV, and they repackaged him. He became Big Bubba Rogers, Jim Cornette's bodyguard.
Right.
Okay. He was that talented that they took a guy who was a Saturday morning jobber and said, "No, this guy's too damn good to be a Saturday morning jobber. We're not doing this shit." Okay. That's how good of an in-ring worker he was. All right. So to say he was not, and we saw later on in the matches he had with Hogan and
Savage and all the top guys,
and Ted DiBiase and Mr. Perfect, and then when he came back, he had
in the late 90s. Yep.
And then he was involved in, so he had the Hogan feud, and then he had one of the most memorable TV angles was him and Big Show, where he was driving off with Big Show's dad in the coffin.
Exactly.
Okay. So no, I mean, please, come on.
I think his grading scale is so thrown off because I don't think he's using enough context to be fair. Again, championships. Well, again, heels weren't win titles because that's the way Vince booked it. So you can't hurt the wrestlers who got guys over or had great feuds and were great in ring and hurt them. And it makes no sense though. Bossman's a Hall of Famer without question. It's actually one of the best mid carders I think in the history of the company. Honestly, if being real honest.
I mean, history of wrestling. Period. I mean,
right?
Because yes. So come on.
Like, come on, bro. All right, the second guy here, Sergeant Slaughter. So I can see the argument.
I can't.
I can see the argument overall, his body work wise, Because outside of the feud of Hogan, what does he really have?
He had a big feud with the Iron Sheik in the WWF, and then he was a major. Well, he was a heel in the WWF for a while. He was a big heel in the early '80s, and he was a huge heel in the NWA territories in the early '80s.
Right.
And he was a big baby face in the AWA, and he was like one of the last big baby faces in the AWA in the mid '80s. And then of course he was WWF World Champion. He main evented WrestleMania. I mean, please, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I think this guy doesn't like Sergeant Slaughter, and that's why he said no.
And he can have. There's an argument. There's an argument because of what he did that 1 year, and how over he was as a heel. That Sergeant Slaughter might be the biggest heel in the history of the company because of that one run as being the Iraqi sympathizer in 1990 in the middle of the Storm and Desert Shield and all that.
I mean,
and him taking that on in general, I mean, had it been
okay. Like, we're talking about pure hatred.
Hatred, right?
I think I would put Piper ahead of him because Piper was.
Well, but Piper was also had the cool factor. Like, you're literally an American.
He got stabbed.
Soldier who's now siding with the enemy.
He got stabbed.
Who, Piper?
Yes.
Oh, well, I mean,
he got stabbed by a fan. Okay.
But Slaughter did get death threats though. To be fair. So
I mean,
a kayfabe story, But he won the title. He won the title. He was the guy that ended the Warriors' disappointing reign, and then that's translated to the Hogan thing. That alone gets you into the conversation.
Yeah, just again, you have to look at when you consider they put people in. I think his WWF career, when you look at everything, again the feud with the Iron Sheik back in like 1984, and then before that in like 81, 82, he was a big heel in the WWF.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at both of those, and then you add in the title reign and the WrestleMania main event, he has a Hall of Fame WWF career. But then when you consider that they put people in the Hall of Fame based on stuff they did outside of the WWE, his work outside of WWE adds to it enough. So yeah, I mean, he's a no-brainer.
Yeah. All right. Finally, the last guy here on the list, Bill Goldberg.
Oh,
that's ridiculous. Yeah. I'm not a fan of Bill Goldberg, and I disagree with him on this.
Well, I am a Goldberg. I've always been a Goldberg.
Oh yeah. So he said what? Championships, Impact, in ring, and what else was the fourth one? Character.
Okay, that character was over as all get out.
Thank you.
I mean, you can't. I mean, please. Okay. Stop it. Okay. Okay. I mean, they did Nitro out of the Georgia Dome when he won the world title.
40,000 people.
Not the Omni. Okay. Not the basketball arena, the Georgia Dome. Okay.
And he's a guy also too that you can argue was attracting folks outside the bubble, like Austin was and The Rock was. So there was obviously Goldberg, totality, legacy wise, certainly not on the level of those guys, but in that 1 or 2 years, Bill Goldberg was as over and as influential, impactful in pop culture. Like Austin, not that's the level of Austin and Rock, because obviously WWE was doing much better and much bigger things as a company, but Bill Goldberg did pull people from the outside of the bubble in those a year or two.
And I mean, the fact, he came back. All right, so he left in 2000. He came back 12 years later and was still over as all get out. Okay.
Well, 3 years later, then 12 years later. Yeah.
I mean, 12 years later. I mean, came back in 2016.
After 2003, you mean? Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, again, listen to that crowd when he came back. And he wrestled Brock Lesnar in the main event at Survivor Series 2016.
Got his kick back.
And he came back and basically squashed him, right? Brock Lesnar. And listen to that. I mean, again, listen to that place go crazy. Yep. And then he and Brock at WrestleMania had arguably the match of the night. I mean that was one of the best like sub 5-minute matches ever. Okay, that match went like 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes, and they went all gas, no breaks. It's one of those matches like you want to show like when people ask, well, you want to show somebody, a wrestling match to get them interested in pro wrestling. That's one of the ones I would pick. Okay, and yeah, I mean, so yes, I mean the last few years, they like a lot of times they didn't book him great. They called him on short notice to come back and do some matches, and the matches didn't turn out very good. Yes, that's all true.
Yeah.
Although and he had a couple matches with Bobby Lashley in 2021 that were very good. And
Yeah.
I would tell people to go watch it. He had one at SummerSlam, and they had to,
The one with Drew McIntyre against in 2021 during COVID at Royal Rumble. Obviously it wasn't a long match. It was a lot
no,
of like chaos outside the ring, but I thought it was a very productive match.
yeah,
Given
and so
limitations.
it's just I mean, I'm sorry, no, you can't say that, please. Bill Goldberg did basically. If you were booking a wrestling company, you were running a wrestling company, Bill Goldberg did pretty much everything you would want somebody to do in a
Yeah.
big spot for your wrestling company, and he was, he was WCW World Champion, he was Universal Champion a couple times, he was World Champion in WWE also.
Multiple times, yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know why we're even having this discussion about Bill Goldberg. I mean, but I'm actually surprised if you threw Hogan in that list and you threw Moore in that list. Then, granted, you're gonna put Bill Goldberg. I'm waiting for him to put Stone Cold Steve Austin next on that list.
well, because guys like, I mean, okay, because guys like Goldberg in the 2000s, the discourse about what was good professional wrestling, that's when like all the work rate nerds took over the conversation starting in the early 2000s. So a lot of, guys like Goldberg were, buried by those guys, and guys like Lex Luger were just given the short end of things, and and
Yeah,
and then
basically it's ridiculous. I think
yeah.
the entire list is. I think this
I
was
mean, Bill Goldberg is one of the people that you watch pro wrestling for.
Yes.
Okay, he's one of the people that yeah. He's one of the people that gets you to watch it, that gets people to watch it in the first place.
Yeah.
All right.
Totally agree with you on that.
And he's doing his retirement match this year, and so it's going, and it's going to be a big deal. And
yeah, and we did something on that actually. That's actually on the YouTube page, where we were predicting where should they do it and where you think they would do it, and I think we both agreed that SummerSlam is the perfect spot. He doesn't need to do the whole like main event thing, and just do it quickly and be done, and that's it. And I think this time around it'll be more well received. I know there's a lot of like Bill Goldberg hate out there. I'm one of the people who can't stand Goldberg. At the same time, I haven't seen him in a couple of years now. There's some time removed. I'm okay with it. I was more miffed of Goldberg's last run because of the fact that he was getting like I was so. For example, the Fiend. We beat the Fiend for the title back in 2020. It didn't make any sense.
Well, I think it's just the opposite. I think because
it halted the Fiend's run. In my opinion, I hated it.
Well, but they should never put a belt on him in the first place because you book yourself into a corner when you put the world title on somebody like that. You book yourself into a corner.
And what you realize too also is that the Fiend didn't need a title.
Well, because the nature of the character, you should not put the world title on him because he has to lose it eventually. And right, and then so I mean, I thought Goldberg was fine to do that because who else? I mean, like who else to take on like the Fiend did a lot of like no selling and stuff like that, and who else would you? I mean, Goldberg was like one of the kings of no selling stuff and firing up and and all that. So, I mean, who else would? I mean, it made sense to me. I mean, they backed themselves to a corner, but I know some people. Yeah, I know some people to this day are still very upset about that. And
without question.
Well, but again, they just shouldn't have put the belt on in the first place. I mean,
yeah. By the way, I don't know if you're watching, but we're not even halftime yet. But the Thunder is beating the Nuggets by 35 points.
I mean, yeah, it's
I bet the wrong game tonight.
look. I might look. I'm about to go look. I'm about to go check what the line is and see if I can.
Get a live bet in there. Nice.
Yeah, maybe on
Smart guy.
DraftKings to see.
Denver get some late points.
Oh yeah, man. That's it.
He's a fine bet.
Yeah, I'm about to go look it up now, baby. How much they down by? Good lord, they're down by 35. All right, yeah.
Yeah, 35 points. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know the line ain't 35.
I think I might go watch that. I think I might go watch that Survivor Series match between Brock and Goldberg from 2016.
Oh yeah, I mean, I highly recommend it.
Yeah. So
Because
anyway,
it was such a shock. Because first of all, I mean that he was coming back.
was that when he came? Is that when he came back? 26. That.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
I'm gonna watch it tonight.
because I think and it was pretty short. It was like 90 seconds. And because I think at the time a lot of us thought that basically he was coming back there was gonna feed him to Brock, right?
Mhm.
Because Brock needed to beat somebody, right?
And also, you had the payback from 2004 at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and then for him to come out there and just like again to beat him the way that he did, I mean, everybody was like, "Oh my God, what did we just see here?"
Yeah.
All right, so they're all right. Well, the line now is 31 and a half. I'm not gonna. I'm not
I would bet.
touching that.
I would
But
bet Denver. I bet
bro,
Denver.
listen, man, if you would look, if you would bet the points at the opening tip, I know it wasn't 31 and a half.
Yeah.
It might have been like 7 or 8 or something, but
Mhm.
brother, you'd be cashing out right now, brother.
Absolutely. Of course,
Man,
we're actually recording this in the middle of the Thunder Nuggets game 2. But then again, we've seen where things happen in the playoffs where the teams come back. So I want to talk about OKC tie one piece now, and then in real time it's Denver took 2-0 lead, but most likely this is a stick.
over under 254.
Ooh,
Now that might
take the under. Hit the under. Anyway, plug
right
away,
now,
Rob. Plug away, Rob.
they got 134 points total. They have to get 130.
What was the number? 254?
Yeah, because they're at 134 right now, and it's not even halftime.
They're gonna pull their starters though. They're gonna play like shit. So I say take the under.
60.
You gambling?
I'm under, man. I'm jumping on the under, brother.
I agree with you on that. I believe under.
Yeah, I'm jumping on the under. All right.
Plug away, Rob.
All right. Well, DraftKings, baby. That's what. I mean, no, you can all right. You can catch me on every week on the Mindless Wrestling Podcast with DJ and Jason, and you can catch me every couple of weeks on the Rob the Genius Podcast.
By the way, I was just thinking about it before we get out of here. I was thinking about it too. Also, you're mentioning about explaining Sergeant Slaughter's history and stuff. I mean, he's probably hear this podcast and thinking he'll probably say, well, "You guys are a bunch of old fuddy duddies. Who gives a shit?" That's probably gonna be his comeback to that.
Well, but if you're going to talk about if you're going to talk about somebody who wrestled in the 1980s, and if you're going to speak on their, worthiness for the Hall of Fame, then
Yep,
you should speak on their career correctly.
yeah,
Okay.
I agree, 100%.
I mean, look, I don't talk about. There's a reason that we don't talk about people. Like I'm not going to tell you whether or not Bobo Brazil should be in the Hall of Fame. I didn't watch Bobo Brazil.
Right.
He's in there, but he was he was a big name of his time. But I can't tell you whether or not he's worthy of being in the Wrestling Hall of Fame because I didn't watch him.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to speak on somebody like Sergeant Slaughter, and if all you saw was the Iraqi stuff, if that's the only thing you saw,
that's Hall of Fame worthy right there.
But that dude had a whole career going back to the 1970s. So if you're going to judge his whole career, like, look, if you completely hated that, if you thought it sucked and you thought he sucked during that run, if that's what you thought,
no, it can't be helped.
But he still had he had a whole 2-decade career before that, and you should if you're going to pass judgment on his career, then you need to get more educated about how his whole career went, and not just
Right.
1 year that you didn't like.
Totally agree with you. Anyway, Falls Count Anywhere. I am on X at EJChris7. Earnestly Podcast, of course, you can follow the channel on YouTube at Earnestly Pod. We are now at 410 subscribers and climbing. Thanks for. By the way, the watch along we just did last Sunday did very well, actually, numbers wise too, also, Rob. So good job on that with the Sunday main event. But like I said, watch Earnestly Pod also on TikTok, and the Instagram page is back also at Earnestly Pod on Instagram as well too. Guys, like I said, we'll be hopefully most likely doing a reaction podcast right after the end of Backlash on Saturday night. So look out for that. We'll be on live on all these channels we just mentioned, also Twitter, Facebook, especially on YouTube, and we'll hopefully be here live reacting to Backlash. So until the next time we see you, it's probably going to be that night.